Hey guys, it's the Melblade 5, and amongst all the varied, wild, and often ridiculous predictions when it comes to Smash Bros. Characters, one that has been widely accepted and a very safe bet is the possibility of a Gen 8 Pokemon being DLC. I myself wouldn't say it's a guarantee, but I could see it happening. This has led to a lot of speculation on who would be chosen if this did happen, some of which I honestly think are kind of stupid. I don't have a definitive answer to this question either, but in terms of who I want the most, I do have a clear response. Inteleon, the water starter. While I could see them instead choosing a non-starter Pokemon, such as Urshifu of a combination of both styles to promote the expansion pass, I think the starters are the best option because they are the most recognizable and prominent to the players. But nowadays, why should relevance matter when we have developer favoritism? Sobble was my starter of choice because I already liked it the most from just their first stages, and upon it evolving into Inteleon, it quickly became solidified as my favorite Galar starter by a long shot, and my favorite Gen 8 Pokemon. Though when judging realistically, I think Inteleon is the least likely out of the three to make it in. I think Cinderace is the most popular, and Rillaboom has its grass typing when we don't have a solo playable grass type going for it. Meanwhile, Inteleon lacks a strong contending factor and could be viewed as too similar to Greninja, as even I thought that when first seeing it. In fact, I think Inteleon is most people's least favorite of the starters. Why? So this video follows the exact same mentality I had for Rex and Pyra, where I don't think they will get added, but wanted to make a moveset for them anyway. I believe that Inteleon does have really good potential for a fun moveset that follows on from the concept of it being the secret agent Pokemon. I've never seen anyone even remotely consider Inteleon as a legit option, so I also wanted to demonstrate just how well he could be implemented into Ultimate through the ways in which the moves he learns can be translated into attacks. That alone gave me a bunch of ideas for special moves and a playstyle. I feel somebody has to stand up for the little guy in this scenario, and that person is going to be me, partly so I can quietly say, don't forget about Inteleon in these kinds of discussions. Despite its unlikeliness, here is everything I thought of for if Inteleon was in Smash Bros. So for Inteleon's stats, reflecting its base stats from the games, he would be a very fast character. I was specifically thinking of his running speed being a little bit faster than Greninja's. However, he would also be a very light character. One of the lightest characters in the game, in fact, thus making him very easy to kill. This is because Inteleon has the lowest combined defense and special defense stats of all starter Pokemon. This leads into Inteleon's playstyle, which is actually just a copy and paste of my playstyle idea for Decidueye, but I think it would strongly fit Inteleon as well due to its theme and stats. Inteleon would be a largely projectile-based character, similar to Mega Man. He would have a few physical attacks, but they wouldn't do much damage or knockback. Thus, Inteleon's playstyle involves keeping a distance from your opponents and hitting them with his stronger projectile attacks. Otherwise, they can easily hit you and take advantage of your low defense. This lines up with how Inteleon's highest stat is special attack, and how spies and secret agents prefer to use stealth rather than engaging in direct one-to-one confrontations whenever possible. Inteleon would have a rapid jab where he uses Swift, and each hit mimics the Swift animation in Sword and Shield. A star will appear around Inteleon's body every time you press the A button, which will then fly towards a specific point that is a decent distance from him, dealing light damage that staggers the opponent for each hit. Meanwhile, his dash attack would be Liquidation, which involves him creating a body of water around himself and dashing through the opponents. But as it's a physical move, it wouldn't do much damage. And unlike my last two character concept videos, I can actually think of a few tilt and aerial moves. The forward tilt will reference Inteleon's pre-evolution, Drizzile. Drizzile's special attack animation has it throw a water balloon. So Inteleon could throw this same water balloon in a similar manner to Snake's grenade by throwing it in an arc, but it bursts into a small, watery explosion before it hits the ground. His up tilt has him use Bubble Beam to spit a bunch of bubbles out of his mouth that slowly travel upwards before bursting, accumulating into a fair amount of damage on anyone hit by it. While Inteleon can't learn Bubble Beam in the game, this wouldn't be the first time something like this was done with a Pokemon in Smash Bros. And for the down air, he would use Water Gun to spit a fast stream of water downwards onto any opponent below, while simultaneously keeping himself suspended in the air while it's active. For For all the other tilts, aerials, and the grabs and throws, at least a sizable portion of the former two and all the latter would involve typical physical attacks for those maneuvers, so those two would not do much damage or knockback. For the side smash, Inteleon uses Hydro Pump to shoot a high-pressure blast of water from his hands in a pose similar to the Emerald Splash! This attack would have a lot of range, about a little bit shorter than Mega Man's charge shot, and deals multiple hits of strong damage to the opponent before knocking them back. The up smash uses Water Pulse to copy the Sword and Shield attack animation, but have it fired directly above Inteleon where the largest pulse will burst for a single hit attack with high knockback. And the down smash uses Water Pledge to create a geyser of water on both sides of him, first in front and then immediately behind. Kind of like a smaller version of Palutena's up smash, but with more horizontal range and being a tiny bit more distant from the user. But I think my idea for Inteleon's playstyle gets a bit more exemplified in his special moves. For his neutral special, he doesn't wield a gun, but instead copies one because, as you'd probably guess, this will be Inteleon's signature move, Snipe Shot. Once again, this attack would mimic its animation in the game, where Inteleon kneels down, closes his eyes, and points his finger towards the opponent before firing a shot of water that travels across the stage at a very high speed and bursts into a watery explosion that is bigger than the one in the water balloon attack. This would be Inteleon's main method of dealing damage with his specials, as it would deal a lot of damage combined with its speed and range. However, unlike most other neutral special projectiles, you would have to sit through the whole animation before the shot is fired. You can't release it early, just like Byleth using Fail Not. So you have to be certain you're in a safe spot and distance before using it, but it would be a great way to surprise attack groups of distracted opponents. In the game, Snipe Shot also has an effect where its target cannot be altered by other moves or abilities. So I thought of the idea that maybe the Snipe Shot special could be unaffected by moves that mess with projectiles, such as Rosalina's gravitational pull or any deflectors. It would certainly give Inteleon a better chance against opponents who can nullify projectiles when they're his main thing. For the side special, he uses U-turn, where he charges forward whilst a light shines around him. This is a physical move, so it wouldn't do too much damage, but a decent amount more compared to his other ones. However, the main draw of U-turn in the games is that it causes the user to draw back and switch with another Pokemon. This can vaguely be referenced in Smash Bros. By having Inteleon jump backwards after hitting someone on top of knocking them away. The intention for this move is to use it to create a distance between Inteleon and opponents to then switch over to projectile attacks, especially when an opponent is rushing towards you by using U-turn to avoid getting hit and remaining separated. In the up special, he uses a different type of special move with Air Slash. For this attack, Inteleon would fire a large, crescent-shaped projectile just like in the game, but he would fire it directly downward, in which the blast of air launches him upward to a very high altitude. It's a lot like Robin's Elwind, except it uses a single, larger projectile with a meteor effect. One part of Inteleon's biology is that it can use the membranes on its back to glide. So after being launched up by Air Slash, the air gets trapped in the membranes to allow Inteleon to glide. This wouldn't be like Brawl's gliding, rather it is basically a more interactive freefall where you have greater control over his movement in the air and he falls slower. Plus, if you point the control stick downward, he'll perform a nosedive that damages opponents both when falling and when he lands back on the stage. Though as Inteleon is at the mercy of the wind in this state, he becomes even lighter than normal, so you're at risk of getting killed more easily if you remain in the air for too long. Lastly, for the down special, referencing another spy activity, he uses Dive. This move works differently depending on whether it is used on the ground or in the air. When on the ground, Inteleon dives into the stage and creates a puddle in the spot where he was standing. In this state, he is invincible, and you can slowly move the puddle in a similar fashion to Greninja's Shadow Sneak. After a short amount of time, or pressing one of the attack buttons, Inteleon will jump out from the puddle and damage all opponents he makes contact with, making the move both a method to avoid harm and for surprise attacks. When used in the air, Inteleon will simply dive straight down, and upon colliding with the ground, a small wave will appear on both sides of him to deal small damage and push nearby opponents away. Another option for creating distance. Now for the final smash. I wanted to wait until the Isle of Armor DLC came out before making this video to properly think about this aspect. The big new battle mechanic introduced was Dynamaxing your Pokemon to gigantic sizes. And building on that is the process of Gigantamaxing, which also changes the Pokemon's form. And the Isle of Armor gave Gigantamax forms to the starters, with Inteleon becoming a sniper on its tower tail. When I saw this, I immediately thought of this working like Snake's Final Smash in Ultimate. Upon activating the Final Smash, Inteleon Gigantamaxes and appears in the background like Giga Bowser. Then he uses his exclusive G-Max move, G-Max Hydro Snipe. A crosshair appears on the screen which the player can control. When the crosshair travels over an opponent, the player can tag them, which gives them a target icon that follows their movements. The number of times a player can lock on to others is dependent on how many players are in the match. More players give more tags, and a single opponent can be tagged multiple times. After a short amount of time passes, Inteleon will fire at all the tagged players in the order they were tagged, and each shot bursts into a big watery explosion. The initial shot from the rifle does the most damage and knockback, that being a ton, whilst the explosion does multiple hits of lesser damage so that anyone who manages to dodge the sniper shot can still get hurt if they don't dodge properly, and so any nearby opponents can also get hurt. If you run out of time before being able to tag anybody, then Inteleon will just fire at where the crosshair is currently located. That's all for the movesets. Now moving over to the extra details with the victory animations. Inteleon's first victory pose has him put his hand up to his mouth before triumphantly laughing, which is based on his victory animation alongside the trainer after being a gym leader. The other two are purely original ideas I came up with. The second has Inteleon glide into the results screen area, ending with a nosedive before striking a cool landing pose. And the third involves an almost recreation of the James Bond intro sequence. Inteleon fires a snipe shot at the camera, and then the camera zooms in and turns to show his side profile before the name splashes on screen. There's nothing for me to say about the victory theme though, because it would just be the normal Pokemon victory theme, the title screen of Red and Blue. They've never done any character or game-specific themes for the Pokemon characters before, so I don't see them doing it now. As for the alternate colors, for most of them, I chose to go with a similar approach to what they did with most of Greninja's colors, by basing them off of other Pokemon that have some vague similarity to Inteleon, with some also slightly tying into the spy theme. The first alt swaps his light and dark blue colors around, whilst also giving him pink membranes and white legs and hands, which is based on shiny Inteleon. Smash Bros is really inconsistent on whether they choose to give a Pokemon their shiny variation as an alt or not, but it makes the most logical sense, so I'm keeping it. Then for the ones modeled after other Pokemon, the second makes his body green, turns his membranes into a paler yellow color, and gives him some red highlights to reference Kecleon, another Pokemon based on a chameleon. The third gives him a black body with violet membranes, hands and legs, and a few pink highlights which references Salazzle, another Pokemon based on a type of lizard, in addition to Salazzle's theme of being a sort of seductress, acting as a possible reference to femme fatale characters often seen with female spies. The fourth makes his body mostly yellow with black membranes and orange highlights, alluding to Heliolisk, another Pokemon based on a lizard who's also known for being a fast special attacker with low defense. Stepping away from the lizards, the fifth makes his body a mixture of light and dark brown with red membranes, which is based on Barraskewda, another Gen 8 pure water type Pokemon with a high speed stat. And cause I thought the brown color might make it look like he's wearing a trench coat for another spy trope. The sixth gives a reddish brown color for his body, black membranes, and white underbody, referencing Thievul, because it's based on a thief who specializes in sneaking around and infiltration, kinda like a spy. And the last one gives him an overall dark blue body, purple membranes and highlights, as well as green legs and hands, which is supposed to be Drizzle's color scheme. With everything involving Inteleon covered, it's now time for my ideas on what stage we would get if this were to happen, and there's no contest. Everybody knows what a potential Sword and Shield stage would be. It's the wild area. The big open area of the game that was the main focus in almost all of the marketing, and where most of the base game available Pokemon can be found. A simple idea for a wild area stage would be to make it a traveling stage where you are taken to various parts of the wild area by flying platforms. That approach is perfectly fine, but we already have quite a few traveling stages already, so I wanted to think of something a bit more unique. My idea is for the stage itself to be located around the lakes area, but the stage would include features that reference the other parts of the wild area, such as tall rocks for the more deserty parts, and a crumbled castle tower like the one found nearby, with Motorstoke being seen in the background. I picture the stage as being fairly large, but more so in horizontal length to reflect the expansiveness of the wild area. The rocks and tower would be present on either side, and the middle section could have water to swim in. The main gimmick of the stage is that there will be several berry trees present, and similar to how you can shake these trees to get berries in the game, hitting these trees will drop berries that can be used to heal if items are turned on. The trees could also be used as platforms where players will slowly sink through the leaves as they stand on them, in which they too will get knocked down when the tree is struck. It's a pretty simple stage, honestly. You mainly just have a lot of room to run around in. I considered trying to do something with the dens and Dynamaxing, but couldn't think of anything that didn't lean towards being unfair. So instead I just decided to have the dens appear in the background, some of which having the beams of light shooting out, alongside many different Pokemon wandering around like in the game. And when it comes to the music, adding on to the existing Pokemon tracks obviously, while Sword and Shield are pretty divisive games, that certainly doesn't apply to the music. Combine that with how Pokemon gets tons of different tracks, and it became pretty difficult to include just a couple of examples. But here are the ones that first came to mind when thinking of which would be most likely. Obviously, most of them are just the different battle themes, with some having the potential to be combined together into medleys. All of them have a fair chance of possibly getting remixes too, but the Gym Leader theme is a huge guarantee, which is why it's the only one I specified. On top of making it a bit more intense and faster paced, I thought that they could even include the crowd chanting when the timer reaches the last minute, or when 2 players remain with at least one of them on their final stock. I also threw in a random idea of including Dynamax? I think that's what the track is called. It was the song they used in that one trailer, but never appeared in the game itself. They could put it in the game, like how they used the Breath of the Wild Switch presentation trailer music in the game, but I doubt it. Anything else I could say about this part would just be what tracks I personally want to see get remixes, Marty's theme. And that was everything I could think of for if Inteleon was in Smash Bros. Again, I think the chances of Inteleon actually making it in as a playable character are pretty unlikely, and if he did have my exact Moveset idea, I can easily picture all the competitive players saying he's low tier. I acknowledge that it's a bit of an unconventional and difficult playstyle to wrap your head around, but I think in the right hands, it can work very effectively and certainly distinguish him from the other Pokemon characters. Whereas with Rillaboom and Cinderace, not trying to sound biased here, but when thinking about how to translate their design themes and moves into attacks, I felt they were a little less unique by comparison. I would honestly be satisfied with any of the Pokemon I used on my team in Sword getting in, because Gen 8 added a whole bunch of Pokemon I really like. But when combining who I'd want the most with what should make the most sense, unlike Min, I'd give my vote to Inteleon. And if we don't get a Gen 8 Pokemon, I'd be fine with that too. But if this crazy idea did somehow happen, I would be so thrilled.